Thank you very much. It's a great honor for me to be here today. And I want to salute the Gateway Medical Society for your important work and urge you to continue to ensure equal access to medical care. And I hope we can become a good partner in this opioid crisis. You may have a preconception about what the U.S. Attorney is, or you may know nothing about what the U.S. Attorney is. So let me give you a little civics lesson. The position of United States Attorney was created at the foundation of the Republic. It's presidentially appointed, Senate confirmed, and by definition, it's designed to be the top law enforcement officer in the judicial district where you're selected. When we had only 13 colonies, there were 13 U.S. attorneys. There was actually no attorney general. Now we have 94 judicial districts. We have 93 United States attorneys. And our job is to enforce the federal law to promote public safety. You hear about us mostly when we're bringing prosecutions, indictments against people who violate federal law. But I have found through my work over the last 6 years that especially in this area, if we're about promoting public welfare and about protecting the public safety, we cannot prosecute our way out of this particular problem. And so today is a very good representative day of how I've expanded the borders of my responsibility. I will be with you here this morning to speak, and then I'm going to rush downtown and speak with the State Secretary of Drug and Alcohol at the Recovery Walk, which is occurring downtown. And then I'm going to come back and see you for a panel discussion later today, and then it goes on and on for the rest of the day. The last 2 days, some of us were together at the University of Pittsburgh Institute of Politics, where we talked about 2 topics, criminal justice reform and the opioid crisis, in a really stirring event over at Station Square. I'm doing all of that while I'm responding to a whole wheel of responsibilities, enforcing the law across the whole spectrum of issues. And so we're getting ready for the celebration of 9/11, and it's my responsibility to work with our partners to make sure that we protect you from anything that might happen there. We're working hard every day on civil rights. We have a dedicated civil rights group, one of the first in the country. We are working hard in the civil area to make sure fraud and abuse doesn't occur, which does intersect with this because one of the things we've learned is the opioid crisis is often fueled by healthcare fraud. So what I wanted to do today is take you through how I came to the problem and just display for you what the architecture is of what we are trying to do so you understand what we're trying to do. And then I'm going to leave you with some suggestions. I tailor my remarks to the particular audience, and as this is a medical audience, I'm going to give you some concrete suggestions about what you can do in the short term, medium term, and long term. Probably if you're here, you don't need to be brought to understand the opioid crisis, but this is a selected group of statistics. We've had a 25% increase in overdose deaths in the last year. That's probably understated. We have very high per capita rates of deaths, and these are some of the worst counties. But if you look at the donut around Allegheny County in Washington and Westmoreland and Lawrence and some of those counties, they've been increasing at a 4-fold rate, and they are multiple times the national average. Heroin and at least one opioid have been present now recently in almost 81% of decedents. A national statistic is as of 2009, drug poisoning past traffic accidents is the leading cause of accidental death, and my analysis of the data is that trend line really began in 2006. And now we have fentanyl, and if that was not enough, we have carfentanil. This is from the National Heroin Threat Assessment, and the dark color-coded areas are the worst parts of the country. You can see we are very much at the highest risk area. I frequently tell people when asked that this, at this point, is a problem for the Great Lakes, Mid-Atlantic, and New England region. I've said on many occasions that really smart people are trying to understand the root cause of the opioid epidemic to see if we can get upstream, even beyond first use, to understand what is the community psychology that allows a person to put themselves on this path to destruction. Many people tie it to the loss of our manufacturing because it's presently a Rust Belt problem, but you have to ask yourself the question, since most of the heroin comes from Mexico, why is it not hit the the border states more quickly. The highways are generally the distribution network, so we work very hard on trying to interdict the heroin coming into this country, but as a general matter, the highways are the arteries of heroin distribution. This is the fentanyl map, and as you can see again, we are right in the middle of the fentanyl map. Now, as you know, as doctors, fentanyl is absolutely no business in the hands of a street drug user. And the counterintuitive problem for the public to understand is how can a person take fentanyl, but you know that the drug addicts rush to fentanyl because they assume that you will die, but that I will not. The hijacked brain of an opioid user, much like the hijacked brain of a laboratory animal who's on opioids, has no self-preservation instincts. It's not a rational, logical brain, it's been hijacked. And the laboratory animals will run to their death, into fire and off cliffs. And that is no different for human beings who get addicted to this terrible substance. And if you don't understand this as doctors, you need to make it your business to understand this. We now have carfentanil, which is basically an elephant tranquilizer. And in the last week or so, we've had staggering deaths in all of the areas surrounding. It has not hit us yet, but in Ohio and Kentucky and all the states surrounding us, Maryland and New Jersey, there have been staggering deaths from carfentanil. And again, I don't need to explain to a medical audience the physiology of this, but it's a central nervous system suppressant, and it's just you go up the dose, the person takes it, and basically they stop breathing. So this is just a random sample of some of the bad news stories we've been dealing with, and my problem is that we've somehow become desensitized to this. Let me give you statistics. 50,000 people last year died of drug poisoning. That's the same number as the entire war in Vietnam in 1 year. 129 people a day. 80 of those are dying from opioid-induced death. 500,000 people since 1999. 500,000 people have died from this problem. Here in Western Pennsylvania, we've had 3 acute fentanyl outbreaks right on top of this very acute opioid problem. In January 2014, in April 2014, and in August 2015. In each case, we have no idea how many people died. We're still trying to gather data. Some of this is the shame and stigma associated with this, where we have these obituary columns with 3 or 4 25-something decedents who are reported to have died of the flu or natural causes. We've had to struggle with the Coroners Association, who is struggling with families to try and get accurate data on cause of death. Actually had a big battle last year to get the data into the DEA statistics. We had to work hard because people were holding back data, and that's just unacceptable. You need to help us stand against that. If we're going to solve this problem, we need to know about every overdose, and we certainly need to know about every overdose death, whether or not law enforcement is going to be involved. So I began really an effort in 2014 with the U.S. Attorney's Working Group on addiction prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery. This was unusual for a federal prosecutor to take this on so publicly, but let me tell you how that happened. In 2012, the district attorney in Washington County told me we've had a 4-fold increase in overdose deaths, and it looks like it's pain pills. The same thing was happening in Westmoreland County, so we had a seminar in Washington and Jefferson, brought the drug czar's executive assistant in, and I should have known when that was completely subscribed in 1 hour. We had a capacity of 200 to 400 in an auditorium at the college, and it was standing room only. It was oversubscribed right away. It's stunning to me. It was very, very moving to see a young woman who was the valedictorian of her class, had been a sports all-star, and had had a terrible journey, and I think she's still doing well. Her parents were there. But her last bad idea was to try and kill herself on the concrete floor of her jail cell after she had been arrested for robbing a bank, which was preceded by her stealing computers from her educational institution. She thought she had a boyfriend, but she was really one of several people around the center of a ring of a person who was using several women as his suppliers and street distributors for an opioid ring, and it started with prescription pills. And that really is the message for all of you. This problem is the confluence of overprescribing in this country, and that coming into the distribution network of highly sophisticated, very intelligent, very business savvy drug cartels, principally in Mexico, who are watching your prescribing patterns and sending street heroin to those locations. Read the book Dreamland by Sam Quinones if you take nothing from this. Read the book Dreamland. It talks about the Jalisco boys from a small town in Mexico who find their way to southern Ohio. We're talking about heroin that's more potent than it's ever been before at the rates of $3, $5, $7 a stamp bag. Do the math yourself. A pill costs basically $1 a milligram. So a person who's on the highway to hell with an opioid addiction probably has quickly a $200 a day habit. At some point they have a Hobson's choice. So they're going to rob their family, rob a bank, rob a store. And the cops, by the way, tell me 95% of the crime they're dealing with is fueled by the opioid crisis. Home invasions, robberies, everything. That data came from the Canonsburg police chief that a couple of us were at an event a couple years ago. The addict has a choice. You're not going to get dope sick, so your choice is really going to be, are you going to continue to try and feed this $200 a day habit, or are you going to go to street heroin? The distributors are standing out there and they're passing out heroin for free on the street. They're standing outside of recovery centers at the McDonald's and the Burger King, enticing people as they come out of recovery, when you know as doctors they're at their most vulnerable and at a great risk of death because their resistance is down and they quickly use to the former path that they've been on. So when we did our work in 2012, we began to realize that step one of what was in sort of the cupboard when I arrived as U.S. Attorney in 2010, which was prosecute the bad guys and put them in prison, was unavailing. We were doing great work, I got to tell you. We did 2 prosecutions in the north side, put 90 people away, took a lot of guns off the street, and we went community by community. I changed the whole prosecution platform from single one-offs to a community impact prosecution. We brought social services in behind it, and we were doing great work. There was great stats. Unfortunately, you don't need anything other than the absence of a heart to be a drug dealer. You don't need any specialized education or training. You have to just have no heart and a desire to exploit sick addicts and willingness to make money illegally. And that's what we have. And I'm not insensitive to the fact that it is related to poverty. I'm not insensitive to the fact that there is an underground economy in some places in the community, and we must enhance education. We must make sure opportunity is equal for everybody if we're serious about this problem. But in the short term, we have to recognize that people are sick with addiction and addicts are drug traffickers are exploiting addicts. And so, as a result of what happened in 2012 and looking at this platinum award-winning work we were doing in prosecution, I realized we couldn't prosecute our way out of this problem. And that was in line with the policy of this president, who's been a great leader on this. You know, the drug czar is in recovery. Michael Botticelli is in recovery for many years. We've gone a long way from a general as drug czar to a person who's in recovery. I have found that using my bully pulpit to tell people that the disease of addiction is preventable and treatable, and you can get well from opioids, was not only good public policy, it actually was good law enforcement. So step one being prosecution, step two was we decided we were going to fight a two-front war. We're going to fight the supply side by giving no quarter to drug dealers, and we're going to open up a front on the demand side by being compassionate to addicts, by working with the recovery community, by recognizing the disease of addiction, and saying, well, we're going to be hard on our prosecution, we're going to be smart about it because we know that if we can reduce demand, we can probably deal better with this problem than if we just singularly focus on supply. So we created this group. This group worked over 90 days very hard, every day. We gave a voice to addicts. We gave a voice to families who had lost their children. We gave a voice to the recovery community. We put them in the room with grizzled veterans of the DEA and other law enforcement components. We made everybody work together, and we came up with some recommendations that were produced in a report that I recommend you also read. This is on our website. It's 50-some pages. It had short-term horizons. It had 29 recommendations going forward. Basically, our goal was to stop overdose deaths. And so our short-term recommendations were increased use of Narcan. Prescription pill monitoring was mandatory, had to be here in Pennsylvania. And we needed Good Samaritan legislation because we could no longer have people who were using drugs with addicts dumping someone who had overdosed on the street for fear of liability. One of the most important things we did was we created a website, one-stop shop for everybody, overdosefreepa.org, funded by the University of Pittsburgh and a state agency. This is now the model for the country, this website. Look at it if you get a chance. In that report, there's a wheel that shows all the states and how they compared on PDMP, Good Samaritan legislation, and Narcan. You'll see at that time Pennsylvania was simply 50 out of 50, the worst. You know now we have a prescription pill monitoring program here in Pennsylvania. It's been years to get it in place. It's voluntary for most people. I'm not sure where it stands for doctors and pharmacists. We had a lot of discussion about that yesterday. It is interconnected to other states, which is important, because you don't have to be a genius to figure out that if you get stymied in Pennsylvania, it's less than an hour to go to about 3 states. We were urging for mandatory, national, we got state by state, voluntary, interconnected. You need to push. For your own welfare, you need to push. I tell every doctor audience, I'm not hostile to doctors. I recognize, like lawyers, there are some bad apples, but I know that you go into the business you go into following the Hippocratic Oath to help people, to serve people. You have no desire to hurt anybody. But let me tell you 2 cases we've had, just so you can be clear about what others are doing. Dr. Oliver Herndon is in prison for 12 years, and we have a healthcare fraud case right on top of his criminal conviction. Some of you nod. He was notorious for a long time. Pharmacies had signs up, no more Dr. Herndon prescriptions. I'm not sure how many people died. We were never able to prove that because we have a high standard, but I know several did. He moved from one location in the Mon Valley where the tenants were in revolt around him to another location in Peters Township where there were fistfights breaking out in his office. People were taking prescriptions from him which were purchased with a 3-minute visit for $200 for unlimited supply of opioids and driving 200 miles to get them filled. I'm outraged about that. But I submit to you respectfully, my outrage as the United States Attorney should be a fraction of your outrage as doctors. Let me talk to you about Dr. Glenn Davis, who's in prison for 6 years. A pain doctor. When we prosecuted him, he had one patient who received, in a June prescription, 80 opioids on Monday, 80 opioids on Wednesday, 80 opioids on Friday. We had a 20-person drug distribution network underneath him that were prosecuted. He was from Johnstown. When the indictment came, he demonized me. He went on television and said I was barbaric. I didn't understand pain. That I was like the people who frustrated pain becoming the fifth vital sign. He's now a felon. He pled guilty. He wasn't even making money off it, as best as I can tell. He was a pain advocate who was pumping pills into people that you wouldn't pump into an elephant. That's a small percentage of your profession. But to get to the end of the story, please understand that these pills that you're prescribing have disastrous downstream consequences for those who are built with the DNA to have the disease of addiction. I don't understand. I've done a lot of work in the medical community over the course of my 35-year legal career. I don't understand how a doctor can prescribe opioids without taking a history from the patient. Have you ever been addicted to opioids? Has ever a member of your family been addicted to opioids? I have had many medical procedures. Surgery on my back, surgery on my elbow, surgery on my knees, wisdom teeth extraction. I have good doctors who I have a lot of confidence in. I have a family member who went to Gateway for a Vicodin addiction. No one has ever asked me about it, and I have been given opioids every time I've had surgery. How does that happen? Can we really accept that right now? Because, you know, we're all in this together. Help is on the way. If you follow the work of Dr. Francis Collins, who led the Human Genome Project, who's at the National Institutes of Health, where you just do your own reading, you know precision medicine is on the verge of being here. Because it's obvious that the pill I take should not be the pill you take. We're built differently. We have different backgrounds. We also know that drugs are going to become less addictive. But we know right now, without help, that non-opioid pain medication might get us to where we need to get to. We're doing pioneering work here in Western Pennsylvania about using music as a pain palliative. We know that ice and other RXs can actually do some great work. I know the box you're in, though. We have bathed the country in pills. We have created a pill society. One data point would be in the last year recorded 300 million opioid prescriptions in this country, or one for every person in the United States. If I'm outraged by that, you should be more outraged by that. How about the fact that we have 5% of the world's population and we consume 99% of the world's hydrocodone? If I'm outraged by that, you should be outraged by that. How could anyone be surprised when we have children who at the young age are told, take coffee for your test, take a pill for your pain. If you're upset, we have something that can make you feel better. Who among us got through the period of 16 through 25 without a struggle? You have your first boyfriend or girlfriend, and you lose your first boyfriend or girlfriend. You have your first job, and you're fired from your first job. Like I was when I fell asleep working on a golf course crew and crashed a tractor into a tree. If you told me that I could have an opioid to feel better that day, I might be on the other side of this conversation. You probably lose a parent. You almost certainly lose a grandparent. You apply to college. You get rejected to college despite the fact you're in the 99th percentile. You go to college and statistics tell us you probably transferred. While you're at college, you're scared to death that you have to pick a major which looks visually to most kids like there's a door I must go through, but that means 99 clothes. And now we put the internet on top of that, where we depersonalize every human reaction, And so everyone is more connected, having more communications, and feels more lonely. So let's give them an opioid. You have to help. These were the people who worked with me last year in the National Heroin Task Force. After we did the work here at Pittsburgh, which received positive acclaim, it became the platform for the National Opioid Toolkit, which was an electronic notebook for people across the country. I was asked to co-chair the National Heroin Task Force. That work was announced by a report that came out December 31st and is on the Department of Justice website. So Dreamland, the local report, and this report is your assigned reading. I found this work very frustrating, if you want to be open and candid. A lot of very good people were working on it, but I reached the conclusion that the solution to the opioid problem is local, propagating nationally. It's not national, distributing trickle down locally. It just doesn't work that way. When you put something in front of all of these people, they can take 6 weeks to agree on whether Tuesday follows Monday. When you do something here in Pittsburgh, particularly in this can-do community, you can do it right now, and it happens. We're leading the nation in the opioid problem, but the numbers are terrible in terms of overdoses and deaths, and they're going to get worse because one of the things that's happening is we're capturing deaths we didn't capture before. But I need your help, and I'm really just the humble representative of a large group of people trying to do the right thing and to create a better way. So, step 1, prosecution. Step 2, fight supply and demand as best we can. This became step 3, and these were our 3 findings. I'm going to read them to you because I think they're really important. Public health and public safety opioid response strategies must be integrated. Policies must be grounded in scientific understanding that substance use disorders are a chronic brain disease. Visible community-based supports must be affordable, available, and accessible. Step 3 is the marriage of public health and public safety. Just like pre-9/11, we had silos in our national security apparatus. We need to reduce and eliminate silos between the public and the private sector, between medicine and law enforcement. We need to work together. That was our conclusion. That's the report that I authored in 2015. That's step 3. Prosecution, two-front war, let's marry public health and public safety. So, what are we doing? Step 4, the final step in the trek, is we're working here in Western Pennsylvania to create, and please write this down because this is the answer, a community-based model, 1, along a continuum of care, 2, to increase interventions, 3, to harvest those interventions, to reduce the epidemic, 4. We are working with the University of Pittsburgh Institute of Politics, which is a bipartisan group with participation from the foundations. The report that's going to come out that you want to pay attention to will probably come out the first week of October. What we're trying to do is demonstrate what we're doing, where the gaps are, and how we can be the model for the country of what the marriage of public health and public safety looks like. A large part of the conversation that occurs off of this is, what are you in law enforcement doing? So you see this fusion center, which is an overused word in my business. But basically, the FBI donated space in Cranberry Township. There are 25 counties in my district. We put people up at that location to co-locate them. I took an assistant in my office and assigned 1 assistant for every of the 25 counties. We met with all the district attorneys and other law enforcement in the other counties. We created a form. They gave me an assistant district attorney so that we're linked. And we're doing training in all the counties with firemen, EMS personnel, and sheriffs, and district attorneys, and hospital workers, because we still don't know about all the overdoses. I'll tell you a story. The overdose fentanyl epidemic, which hit Washington County, was on the front page of the Washington Post last August. Front page. It was apocalyptic if you were in my shoes. I was on vacation with my family. It was so bad I rushed back. The first report I got was when they hit Charleroi, people were laying on the street like it was the end of the world. People had just passed out. If you want a current visual of this, there's a picture that's coming over the internet that the police in East Liverpool, Ohio have circulated, and perhaps you've seen it, of a 50-year-old grandmother and her 47-year-old boyfriend passed out in their car with the children in the back seat. Okay, that visual is what I was getting from law enforcement in Washington County. One of the stories I was told was in a space of 1,000 yards, a woman going to an NA meeting with her sponsor, Relapse, walked into a Rite Aid, I don't want to say Rite Aid, let's just say a drugstore. I don't know what drugstore it was. Bought a syringe, injected herself in the ladies' room, and dropped on the street. Less than a couple hundred yards away, a woman in a Bob Evans was eating and dropped at her table. And less than a couple hundred yards away, 3 addicts driving in a car passed out while driving and crashed into the side of a building. I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we talking about here? Where's the public outrage? Where are the news tracks? If this were ISIS, we would be, the response would be totally different. I agree with what we did on Ebola. It was important, but give me the relative risk comparison. I agree with what we're doing as a public health matter on the Zika virus, but give me the relative risk comparison. Where is everybody? So I rushed back, and I'm trying to find out how many people died. No one can tell me. The number that was in the headline in the Washington Post is not accurate. So when we put the Fusion Center, I announced it in Washington County. It was 6 months later, and I said, I need to know how many people overdosed from August 2015 to January in the last 6 months in Washington County, which is a county of 200,000 people. As we were getting ready to announce this initiative and talk about what law enforcement was going to do as we married public health and public safety, someone said it's 223 people. Staggering number in that community. As I walked to the podium, someone said, that number's no good, it's 278 people. Staggering number. I'm told it's over 300 people. 300 people in 6 months, not dead, but overdosed. A lot of them dead in a county of 200,000 people. And we still don't have reliable data on that number. So the Fusion Center is our effort on law enforcement to really reach to the medical community and to work cooperatively, because if we can't establish the universe of overdoses, how do we understand it? Huge hurdles in putting this together. You know, law enforcement doesn't want to be chasing data unless I tell them I'm going to prosecute somebody. You have to break down all these silly, nonsensical norms of I'm looking for statistics to measure my hours of my guys because I get funding streams based on that. And I'm saying people are dying, you can't worry about that. But anyway, we also had to push drug takebacks. You know, the drug takebacks had stopped. So you probably know this, but this has largely been fueled by kids taking medicine from family members, throwing it into bowls and having parties, and doing this reckless thing of just randomly taking Russian roulette opioid pills. Well, now they tell me that one of the principal risks if you have an open house and you're a realtor is you have to tell your client to put away the opioids, because people are going to open houses not to look at the house, but to steal opioids. And people are stealing the palliative pain, end-of-life pain medication from their friends' grandparents. And you hear stories about kids going into their best friend's house knowing that the father has cancer and taking the opioids out and putting Tylenol in. And selling them sometimes. So We now have the DEA back on board with take-backs. We have take-backs through the state of Pennsylvania, which has been a great partner. You need to tell your patients, don't keep the pills around when you don't use them. And I think there's things coming for all of you that you need to support. I think in New York they have electronic prescribing for this. That will protect you. You ought to support it. I think they're talking about peer review of doctors who prescribe. You know, you may consider that an intrusion into your work, but consider that it may protect you. They're talking about having a second doctor review the pain prescribing so that if I have shoulder surgery, I get X pills, but a second doctor has to authorize the second prescription, and it has to be a consultation on that. You may say, I don't want another doctor looking out over my back, but you know, what I think is coming is you're going to answer for how many of your patients are addicted. And the DEA is going to decertify you. Because if you don't prescribe correctly, that's what's coming. I'm told, and I don't know whether this is true, that you don't get adequate training on this. I'm told that a veterinarian gets more training on this than a doctor treating people. I know this. I've been tireless in going out to every medical school I can go to. I've been invited by the health networks to talk to graduating students in the health sciences. I don't think we can talk about this enough. But I can't do this on a retail basis alone, and I'm more interested in sustainability because I will not be U.S. Attorney forever. This cannot be based upon the energy of one person or a group of people. The reason I go out and leave my family at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning is because I need you to pick up the baton and carry this message. And I submit to you again, whatever my level of interest in this, it should be a fraction of what your level of interest in this should be. So we've done all these things over the course of the last year. And on the national level, one reference point is in 2015, I was asked by the drug czar to participate in the national press call to support the president's budget request for opioids. It was $120 million. So it had a lot of great stuff in it. In 1 year, that request went from $120 million to $1.1 billion. None of it has been authorized. You know, I'm not in a position, particularly in front of a camera, to tell you what I really think about certain things. And I'm an apolitical presidential appointee, so I want to expressly say that I have no political views. I'm politically agnostic as long as I'm U.S. Attorney. But I still have opinions. I have opinions that if you're serious about dealing with the opioid problem, you can't deal with it without putting some money on the table. That's not a political statement. I think that's a fact. I'm looking at the relative contribution to other things and seeing 129 people dying a day and saying, show me the money. I'm looking at a Congress that gets to vote that they're against the opioid problem and they're outraged about it, and then doesn't vote to let things come to the floor to appropriate the services we need. I told a story yesterday at Pitt. Jim Comey, the FBI director, has become a good friend of mine. I have immense respect for him. He's a former U.S. attorney, one of our best. And he often tells the story about the frustrations of law enforcement and that they are akin to watching a youth soccer game. You can substitute soccer for football and any other youth sport. You know, when the kids are sort of 8 and under, they all chase the ball or the puck. And they leave huge pieces of the field open. And the general progression of kids in sports is they sort of begin to understand their lanes because they understand they can't catch the ball at all times, and if they do catch it, they're going to leave someone open in front of the net. Well, we laugh about that as the innocent inexperience of youth, and it's a perfect metaphor for how we deal with many public health and public safety problems in this country. When we started this work, we found there were huge gaps and huge overlaps. We tried to make sure that all the players are covering all parts of the field right now. But we really need data, and we need everybody working on the problem. And the resistance that we've had to Narcan, which is to reverse people, is one of the most completely baffling experiences of my 6-year career. I have published, and I can share with you the top 10 dumb reasons why people don't use Narcan. They were written by Mitch West of UPMC and now Gateway Medical. There's really 13. But I run around to school superintendents and school solicitors and police chiefs to try on a retail basis to get them to break down the barriers to using Narcan. You know, it's only been around since 1971. It has no side effects. The proxy argument that you can't afford it is nonsense. I can get it for you for free right now. It should be in the room with the defibrillator, because statistically we're more likely to overdose than have a heart attack right now. Where is it? It was news in the paper yesterday that the Ross Township Police were going to use Narcan. There was a press report recently that only 6 school districts are using it. It is insane. It is madness. When the law enforcement people get honest with me, they say, oh, well, why do we want to help someone? Let them die. Let's Darwinism. Let's thin the herd. Why should I give it to them when they're going to be addicts tomorrow? We even hear stories of family members resisting law enforcement giving it, saying, I've suffered enough. I'm not going to watch this anymore. Let them die. Imagine an accident on Bigelow Boulevard, and the police come up and say, I'm sorry. My conclusion here on scene was you were speeding. You were negligent. We're going to get back in the ambulance here because if we help you, you're probably going to be negligent again. I mean, who among us is to judge people who may have become addicted because they tore their ACL in a youth soccer game? And they had the disease of addiction or the predisposition to be addicted. And even who among us is going to conclude that someone who, quote, voluntarily began to use drugs got up one morning and said, I'm going to completely destroy my life now. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my marriage. I mean, one of my first exposures to this problem was a lawyer who's now dead, who Dr. shot. Before he died, he lost his license, lost his family, and in order to get opioids, he was smashing the 67 bones in his feet with a sledgehammer. Now, you tell me, was he voluntarily taking opioids? Would a person smash the bones of their feet with a sledgehammer to do that? It's just unacceptable that we debate these public policy concepts on the worst, most extreme story at one end and nonsense on the other. You need to support these initiatives. You need to help change the calculus of this other insanity that a person addicted to opioids can go for 28 days and be cured. I'm not a doctor, but my simple conclusion is that a person needs some form of treatment for one day for every day that their brain was hydrated. Usually it's detox, to 28 days, to aftercare, to recovery supports, and we need warm handoffs at every step along the way. So the University of Pittsburgh Institute of Politics plan is coming. That'll be step 4 you want to watch for. There's going to be a great place for doctors to do productive work in this area. And I think your initial reaction to it may be, you know, why are we blaming the doctors for people who take drugs? I hear that. This is designed to give you a space where you can have a productive role and everybody can participate, because we cannot solve this with anybody sitting on the bench. So I've covered what I have. I have a slide deck that I tailored for the specific audience. This is for you as doctors. I have about 5 minutes to take any questions you may have. It's been an honor to be here today.
The push to get doctors to prescribe more, and first for end-of-life treatment and cancer treatment, and then that you had to take care of people's pain, and even that physicians could be sued for not taking adequate care of patients' pain.
Right.
And it is, seems to me, it's always the law of unintended consequences that produces the problem. And I think that that's what happened when you look for what are some of the causes of overprescribing. I think that's one of the causes of overprescribing in the mainstream of physicians.
Let me add 2 more pancakes to your stack. You're rated. You get rated for funding, and you get rated, your hospital gets rated. The person who is most likely to say their pain is a 10, when I might say it's a 5, is probably the person who's most likely to give you a bad rating, especially if you don't take care of it. Let me give another pancake on the stack. You probably have drug company salespeople come in and say, if you don't push this drug, you're not going to get the next one. Let me give you another pancake on the stack. You're probably part of a physician group, and your partners are saying, why do we have this person in the lobby saying we're no good? I need you to fix that.
I don't think that is as big a factor as the fact that, really from a guidelines point of view, physicians were told that you really are supposed to take care of patients' pain. And from a historical point of view, that came from taking care of cancer pain and end-of-life pain. There was that history, and then it extended, and all pain was supposed to be adequately taken care of, and then came that you could be sued for not adequately taking care of patients' pain. I think that's where there was a quote, logical extension, and you could be sued for that. So that was pushed. I mean, I remember that, and I'm not even in that category of physicians.
Right.
And then my question is, speaking with someone I work with whose daughter has had problems multiple times, and this person has gone through a lot and pulled her daughter out of crack houses and heroin places where the police wouldn't go, and she had her daughter clean and for many years, and the daughter was then out of another rehab facility and on methadone, and the daughter was trying to get off of methadone. This woman called many places. No place would take her withdrawing from methadone. They told her, have her go out and get heroin. We'll take her on heroin withdrawal, but we won't take her on methadone withdrawal.
I find that makes sense to them.
Yeah, I mean, from a treatment center saying that to somebody, I mean,
1,000 years from now, people are
want
going to
more?
look back at us and say, what were we doing? Are you serious? This is how we dealt with this? Because
the methadone withdrawal is so painful.
but medically assisted treatment is an area where doctors have a voice. People think Vivitrol is a wonder drug. It is not. It's important. People want me to prosecute every methadone and Suboxone dealer. I will not. We have some people who abuse that and we deal with it, but generally medically assisted treatment, particularly for the prison population, is important. Harm reduction is another controversial area which Narcan can be classified in, but the issue of needle exchanges, we have one of the best harm reduction people in the country here in Alice Bell. And, and then there's the whole issue of amnesty. There's a program in Gloucester, Massachusetts, which I love, but it's not popular with people who don't, I came to law enforcement after a career private life. But many people who spend their whole life in law enforcement don't like the Gloucester Angel program, but basically it encourages people to bring their family members in, gets them the treatment, and gives them amnesty. So there's a whole series of things where you can plug in. But consider this. The federal government agencies like the FDA and the non-government agencies like the CDC haven't been just perfect on this. CDC just issued prescribing guidelines this spring. It's 2016. And the FDA approved Vicodin 2.0 over the negative review by the scientific panel, and that was put into the stream of commerce when we were dealing with OPANA, which was Oxy 2.0, which was slow release Oxy. When people were dying before we had fentanyl deaths, we had OPANA deaths all over the place. So if you're a doctor, I don't think you can put your head in the sand and say, well, this is someone's telling us to push pain and it's not my problem. Your patient is your primary concern. And I'm telling you, what I'm seeing in my world is we have the worst drug epidemic in human history right now. And I don't see the way out of it yet unless we can get everybody starting to say, we're in a burning building and we need the fire department here, and instead just going about the business every day and saying, well, that's a shame. You know, so I appreciate your comment, and I agree. Yes, sir.
I just have a quick question. I'm a psychiatrist, and I see the opioid problem coincides with the mental health crisis that we have. Do you have any comments about the strategy to include, mental health access?
It's a big piece of it. Yesterday, Diane Holder said eloquently, if mental health problems were the stepchild of regular medical care, addiction problems are the stepchild of mental health problem. But the Mental Health Parity Act was a good step. I mean, it's sort of confounding. Again, those who judge us from a historical standpoint will say they were more concerned about the knee than the brain, the central processor of the human organism. So I don't understand. I'm baffled by the lack of understanding and appreciation. To me, if I were redesigning the entire medical response, it would be brain first. So thank you for your work, and I hope that we come to some enlightened period in our lifetime where we recognize that the diseases of the brain and the struggles of people that are related to the brain and the mental well-being are as important as the physical well-being. Thank you.